Great.
Great. All right. Well, welcome to Coffee with a Purpose, everyone. A rainy morning, but we're all happy to be together, hopefully. And our continuing conversations with candidates running for town offices. This is the last session, I think, where we will have uncontested candidates, actually contested candidates. Yeah, sorry. And even that's incorrect. I need to drink more coffee. Moved to the thing. This morning we have Donna McKenzie running for election to the school committee. She has previously served in that role, but is not currently serving that role. And Kathryn Coughlin running for re-election to the select board. In past weeks, we've tried both approaches of just kind of blending the discussion or having it sequential, and Donna and Kathryn have decided that let's try sequential today. So we will start the time with Donna, give her a few minutes to talk about her candidacy, and then use about half of our time to engage in discussion with her on that. And then we'll switch over to Kathryn to talk about her candidacy for select board. I think at the moment we've got a fairly small group. I'm wondering whether we need to bother with introductions. Donna and Kathryn, are you recognizing everybody here at this point?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right. We'll go ahead and start then. So at that point, I guess Donna, I will turn the floor over to you.
Okay, so we don't have to do our general introductions like you usually do.
Well, we would certainly like you to do kind of your general opening statement of why you're the best possible candidate for school committee. But I mean, do you recognize everybody here?
I do.
Yeah.
I just okay.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah,
fine.
so we're gonna skip that part. So
okay. Well, I just want to say it's wonderful to be here with you on this St. Patrick's Day. And if you're Irish, you think that rain is lucky because it's always raining. Like if you get married and it's raining, oh, it's a special blessing. So it's a special blessing, but it really is a special blessing for us because we're in a level 3 drought. So actually having some rain is a very, very good thing for our environment. Not so much for my hair. I look like I've just been swimming. I wish I could tell you I had, but I have not just been swimming. But anyway, it's a pleasure to be here with you and to talk a little bit about school committee and my school committee campaign this morning. By way of introduction, I'm just going to give you several elements that are an important part of my campaign and why I'm campaigning, and then give you a way of a little bit of an introduction. I think most of you know me, but I think I know there are things about me that you don't know. But and by way of luck, I just learned this morning that the first 2 people whose votes were registered in Natick actually voted for me for school committee. Oh, that's kind of interesting. It was sweet, they told me. So
they told you.
That's how I know. That's how I know.
yeah, I was wondering about that.
We still do, I'm sure. We have privacy of the ballot box. I mean, that's very, very sacred.
Yeah.
So let me just begin by saying that number 1 to me is to enhance critical thinking and achievement of our students. That the purpose of public education is, of course, to create citizens. I mean, we pay for public schools because we're educating for citizenship, and we want to have thoughtful, critical students, no matter what they think. I mean, we don't indoctrinate, we don't tell people what to think, but we help them think rigorously and think through options, and hopefully incite a love of learning and a curiosity for scholarship. I once knew somebody who said the purpose of an education was to make your mind an interesting place to live for the rest of your life. And I've always thought that was a wonderful way of describing education. If we are doing really well if we have students who come out of school no matter what they do next, who really are curious and whose lives become more interesting for the rest of their life. So that is number one. And also, I think for me, empowering leadership is important. I spent several months actually trying to get other people to run for school committee. And it's like, good luck with that. Nobody would do it. And it wasn't because they thought everything was okay on the school committee or they agreed with the school committee. And it's actually, what you have to know about me too is I'm a thoughtful person. I'm not afraid of changing my mind or thinking something through. But this has really made me think about government and going forward and what we need to do, because it's not acceptable not to have people who want to be part of the school committee, because it's such an important body in town. And an uncontested race is not a good thing. I was the one who talked Jamin into running. I sent him an email back on September 5th. And we began a conversation, and I wasn't successful until almost the day before papers were due. And I thought, oh my God. So I turned in papers and I thought, well, apparently I am not done yet and there's still more that I could do. And I thought about that. And part of it is empowering leadership. I think the best leaders in some sense are dispensable because you excite other people about being involved. They want to be involved. And I find that lacking right now in Natick. And I find myself thinking, Brinley knows this, because way back when she asked me to sign the papers for the Charter Commission, I said I needed to have the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee play out, and then she should come back and talk to me. So I have to say, I'm more on the fence. I just am not happy by the lack of willingness. We have a lot of smart people in town, and I don't know why they're not stepping up. And I think it is important to empower leadership. It's not good enough to do the same old. And it's not good enough to have a committee where one person is on like every negotiation committee, for example, because what if something happens to that person? I mean, the rest of the committee certainly needs to know and needs to have the skills to be able to serve on a negotiating team. And one of my former school committee colleagues used to use this example, and I think of it sometimes and I think it's kind of funny, so I'm gonna borrow it. But she said, it's like when you're giving out Halloween candy and you have a big bowl of it, and one person comes along and they dump the whole bowl in their bag. And you have to, when you're talking about leadership, you have to be able to share. And the best leaders are dispensable. It's not because you are doing a fabulous job. It's because together you are doing a fabulous job. One of my goals is empowering leadership. And I think, I don't know how long I'll be lucky enough to live. I've had a very bad year. I have a dear friend now in intensive care. I've had 2 people die in the last month, but I am determined to use whatever time I have to make this town and my schools a better place and to contribute in the ways that I can. So my second point again is empowering leadership. My next point is affirming every student that I don't care if you call it DEI, I don't care what you say, how you talk to people and what you say to students matters. You can change people's lives by simple words, right? I mean, I come from a working class background, and I think I would, with the exception of Elise, maybe would be the only working class person on that school committee. But back in the day, it was Joe Keefe who made a difference in my life. He called my mom one day and I thought, oh my God, I'm in trouble. What did I do? And it turned out he wanted me to join some kind of like honors program or something. And I was like, oh my God, Dr. Keefe must think I'm smart. I never forgot that. It carried me through high school. It carried me through moments when I didn't think I was so smart. So teachers really do change lives, and things that people say to other people matter. And I know that even from my science background. I have a background in science. I did a dissertation on predictive genetic testing. I can tell you that you have a 50% chance of having a perfectly wonderful child. Your baby will be perfectly healthy. Or I can say, oops, you've got a 50% chance that you're gonna have a child with some god-awful disease because you're carrying this gene in this form. So how we say something and how we communicate, it matters. And we need to affirm our students because we can change their lives. And we also need sustainable practices. We don't have the luxury of postponing concern for ecology and concern for the environment. And these are terrible times right now because almost anything you can think of, every day there is a new executive order. I mean, this country is being run by executive orders. We have executive orders that have basically wiped out different populations of students, our LGBTQ students, and all of the EPA regulations. But does that mean we stop? No, I think that means that we have to speak and speak more boldly, and brave collaboration is called for. And we're going to have an opportunity coming up with Memorial School. We're excited. The third time was a charm when we applied. We were accepted into MSBA. Yes, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to go back and ask the community for a debt exclusion override. But look at it this way, the reimbursement that gets offered by the state, that is amazing. It's just amazing. And we are not like the town of Concord. We cannot build an elementary school with no MSBA reimbursement. It can't happen.
What's MS and whatever that is?
Oh, I'm sorry, the Massachusetts State Building Authority. Is that what you're asking, the MSBA?
So they put in funds.
They put in funds. It is the mechanism through which most school districts go through when they want to either do a new school or a rebuild. It's a very rigorous, it's an extremely competitive process. And it took Natick 3 applications, but this is not unusual. It took 3 applications for Kennedy. So I think that's an exciting moment, and there's a lot of opportunity to build that school in even more sustainable ways. And I liken it to sometimes like buying a computer. When you buy a computer, you want to buy the best that you can afford, because as soon as you take it out, it's going to be obsolete. And I think the same you can almost say about building a school in a sustainable way. And I'm excited about even the possibility of building the school with geothermal. I mean, I don't know if you know what geothermal is, just amazing. It's just amazing. And I've been in conversation with Jillian about this because I fell in love with geothermal when I was taking care of my father, who's a builder. And we used to have discussions on building to keep him busy. And I learned a lot about it. And so I'm excited about the possibility of all the sustainability. Just by way of introduction, I think you all know that I'm an educator. I have a doctorate in bioethics, and I have taught at Cornell, and I've taught at Fordham. And but I have to say, I'm also trained as a chaplain. I've served as a chaplain at several schools, and most recently at Babson. And I just think of myself as a community servant. But in some ways, the thing I'm most proud of is that I provided full-time care to my parents that allowed them to be in their home and to die in their home when they were old. And I learned probably much more about the healthcare system than I did doing my PhD, having to serve as their advocate for all of that. I learned a lot. I think I became a kinder person, a more compassionate person. So I wanted to add that. Presently, I'm an elected town meeting member. I've been a town meeting member for at least well over 10 years. And I am also a member of the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee. I am a member of founding member of a group called Black Lives Belong. And Deborah Mitchell and I continue to be good friends. Black Lives Belong has decided that it wants to be more concerned about actually local events, local activities, and not take on so many national things because honestly, it's overwhelming and we're still making our way. So stay tuned. We hope to have a significant event in April. I am also on the advisory committee for the Natick Service Council. And I have really appreciated that. I've learned a lot about that. And what else am I on? I've been involved with Eco Natick. And also in my spare time, I have a college reunion coming up and I'm one of the organizers of that college reunion and possibly involved in putting together a memorial service for my classmates. And I have a dear friend who was the first woman to get tenure at Yale Divinity School, who's now turning 90. And I am helping to celebrate her life. And I am in the process of putting together a tribute video that includes contributions from people all over the world. I just got a moving video from a group of sisters in Uganda because she founded an AIDS organization there. So I do a lot by way of telling you that I do a lot. It's my life. So
Could you
Cindy,
refresh my memory as to your previous service on the school committee? Didn't you serve before?
yes, I've served 2 terms on the school committee before. And it's been a couple of years since I was on the school committee. And I want to add that it's actually been good for me not to be on the school committee for a couple of years because I've learned more about the power of suasion. I've gone to almost every single meeting. And I've learned too, like I always wanted when I was on the school committee, for the school committee to engage in a process of self-evaluation. I mean, the school committee evaluates the superintendent quite rigorously. And I've always thought that the school committee should also evaluate itself. I mean, as a professor, I always had my students learn to develop that kind of self-reflection and evaluate their own critical skills. And the school committee has never done it. And it still remains my hope that the school committee would engage in that kind of rigorous self-reflective process. Because I think that when you're on the school committee, you're also an educational leader and you should be modeling that kind of behavior also for the community. And you should be able to also grow and develop in your ideas and change your mind. And I have to say, I think I'm less rigid than I used to be. Now that I've gotten a little bit older. I mean, the world was always gray for me, but I think it's even more gray. And at the end of the day, I think what matters is diplomacy and kindness and working together. And I have great hope that Natick can continue and can even be a better school system than it is. So I would love your questions. I would welcome your questions.
Those are great introductory remarks, Donna. Thanks for those. When was it that you served on the school committee before? What years approximately? Do you recall?
I think it was 2016 to 2022. They were tumultuous years. I want to add though, those were tumultuous years. I think I'm still blamed for closing Johnson School by the Johnson community. And I have to say, I get it. I went to a native school that you could walk to. I mean, it was a long time ago and I sound like one of those old fuddy-duds. But when I was in 2nd grade, we could walk off campus and go to this place called the Buckaroo and go out for lunch. It's unthinkable that we would let 2nd graders do that now, right? And that was on West Central Street. So it involved not only like going off campus a little bit, but and it was great because I walked to school every single day. So being able to walk a neighborhood school, I get it. It's great. It's actually great. It was with great sadness that decision was made. And for me, the deal breaker was the lack of accessibility, especially after caring for my dad who was in a wheelchair. And I wheeled him like really all over town, sometimes because it was easier than getting him in and out of a car. But it was great. It added to his life. So I learned a lot about the curbs and the cuts, the curbs, or the lack of the cuts in the curbs, or getting in and out of buildings. So anyway.
Follow-up question, if I can, just on Johnson, it's always, my tenant had a son that went there and it was part of the last class, but it's, when I hear about, I don't have kids, but when I hear about schools here in Natick, I always hear how great Johnson was. Was it just the size of it, the walkability, or what other factors contributed to being so?
Johnson was a great school. Johnson has magical teachers. If you know Jefferson Wood, and before I made that decision, I went and sat in his classroom and oh my God, it's pure magic. The other thing that Johnson had all kinds of, it was a Title I school. It was our Title I school, meaning that the economic diversity in that school was rich. But they like partnered with a school in Africa. I mean, these elementary school kids had pen pals with kids in Africa, the kind of like global bent and the teaching. I think it was more than, it was the teaching itself. The teaching was excellent. And the peacemakers, I was like, oh my God, they brought tears to my eyes every time they sang in their mission. They were fabulous. I would love for them to have continued, but I understand the difficulty of the decision and going forward but I'm hopeful that we can garner that same quality. It's more than just the building. The building is charming. Even though it is not accessible. And for me, that was the deal breaker. Even that was 256 students, more like a little private school.
Were some of those teachers allowed to go elsewhere to reduce the size of class sizes elsewhere?
Yes, the goal was when Johnson was closed that as many of those teachers as possible kept their jobs. Some lost them because they were retiring anyway. But the goal was that no teacher would lose their job, that they were reassigned.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh,
No, that,
like,
I'm glad it's come up because for some people it's been, it's always there and I'm associated with that. And, there actually are other people on the committee who were involved in that decision too. And I'm not sure why I seem to take the hit more, but.
yeah, if I could use that topic to kind of ask a related question, which obviously there was a lot of community involvement, some level of community input to the decision. Maybe using Johnson as an example, but trying to extract from there. How do you look at the process of when the school committee needs to make a decision? What's the appropriate amount of community involvement? How do you feel about whether that community interaction occurs through social media or just through more official channels? How do you make that decision of, is it my charge to do what the community wants me to do, or is it my charge to do what I think is best for the school system? And any aspect of that. And you could use Johnson as an example, or just talk in abstract.
I think it's a great question. And I preface anything that I say, it could have been done better. Almost anything that you do could have been done better. And you learn a lot when you go through it. But the process of closing this school was more careful than closing any other school in the history of the district. Joe Keefe had to close 8 schools on his watch because on his watch, Proposition 2.5 came in. There wasn't money. There was also a decrease in enrollment. And back in the day when those schools closed, you just got a letter saying, surprise, you're going to Brown School next year, not West School. West School no longer is. And in, my case, the kids in my neighborhood have been like in about 3 different districts. So redistricting has happened often. I think as a school committee, remember, you have the responsibility first and foremost to the district, to make the district as vibrant and as life-giving as possible for all of the students. You have 5,300, more than 5,300 students. It's not just your own kids. that you worry about as you sit around that table. It's every child in town and their needs that you need to worry about. So again, we could have done it better. It's the school district and the growth of the school district that had to matter. I mean, there are pluses and sometimes in a larger school from an educational perspective, because there's more of a chance of an affinity group if you have a child that sometimes seems to be like the odd child out or subject to bullying or whatever. There's more of a chance that they will find a like-minded kids in a larger school community. And I think that that's the hope for Memorial. There's some confusion saying because the application says one of the reasons is because of size. And the size is the size of the classroom, not the number of kids. That the size of the classroom has to do with educational plans. And 21st century education involves a lot of project-based learning and all of that. It's completely different. You walk a fine line as a school committee member. You try to give your superintendent some latitude in how they make a decision and in how they enforce the decision. But there were some on the committee, there was at least one or two people on the committee who would have closed Johnson sooner, who would not have done like the peter off period, but would have just said, you know, like Joe Keefe did. There's no Johnson next year. But I have to say I think a lot of care was taken with this closing, despite what people say. I mean, I would always like us to take care with our students and to be sensitive. I think there was also sensitivity in giving parents choice about where their child was districted to from the Johnson school, but that has created insane situations on High Street. There are families who are districted to 3 different schools. You know, that is not a good thing. I mean, I did a public speak saying we need to redistrict, and the plan is to redistrict, at least in the context of Memorial, but there needs to be a whole redistricting plan. It's not acceptable to have kids on one street going to 3 different schools. So they are not wrong. I mean, there are a lot of things that the Johnson parents are wise about. There are things that could have been done better. I don't know. I hope I'm answering some of your questions, Doug.
Yeah, you are. And that's fine. Sarah, I see you had your hand up. Did you want to weigh in or?
Yeah, let me just hang on. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
You don't need to
Okay.
turn the video on.
Yeah, sorry, I disappeared. I'm recovering from knee surgery and sitting in that chair got very uncomfy. So I'm sitting on a soft place now. So this may be a little bit off the topic of what the school committee can really accomplish, but speaking as a parent who raised 4 kids in the Johnson district, I think part of the question came up, what made that school magical? And I think part of it really was the community that, you know, it was a small enough school. We walked our kids to school. We got to chit chat around the doorway when we dropped them off and we picked them up. And the parent community was so tight and so supportive of that school. And I think that's harder in a much larger school when many of the kids are bused and you have these multiple locations where maybe there are 2 or 3 parents that bring their kids to that stop, but it's not the same central location. And as I say, this may be a little bit outside of what the school committee can do, but just any thoughts on how to nurture that sense of community around a school, not just for the children, but for the families. Thanks.
I think the whole idea of community is so critical. And Johnson always took the prize for having the most outstanding community. I mean, you talk to the Natick Service Council people, they were like, oh, this is our strongest community in Natick, is that Johnson community. And my neighborhood was once in the Johnson School District, and I have elderly neighbors who are like, please don't tell me you're gonna close Johnson School. Or if you're gonna close it, really close it. Don't keep dangling that possibility out there. I think there's probably nothing more important that we can do in Natick than to try and create community, to try and bolster community. And I think it's the hardest work of all. I think that people's lives have gotten more complicated. that you mostly have two parent income earners at this point. There's a lot more childcare needs. I think it's really difficult, but it's not impossible. And I think we have to try. And I think it's more than, just PTOs or bolstering PTOs. We have to create circumstances where people can come together. And I always commend you on doing this because I think this is just a small example of a way that you bring people together. And I think that matters, this kind of a forum. So we need to create more forums. But Sarah, I share that perception, and I can understand you having educated your children at Johnson, that it was an incredible neighborhood. And I hope that the closing of the school, I hope that the neighborhood and the neighborhood connections, I hope they endure. I don't know what will happen with Johnson School, and I'm not in charge of it. Sometimes I feel like we're all playing a giant Legos game, like, oh, what are we gonna do with this? Or what are we gonna do with that, right? But I think if somebody asked me, and I've said this before, and my friend John Coughlin, who honestly says he hates me, which is fine, accused me of wanting to build Disneyland at Johnson. But I've always had a desire for a fully accessible playground in Natick, always. And we don't really have one that's fully accessible. Fully accessible would also include seniors. There's senior housing across the street. And those houses downtown are very close together. They don't have the advantage of large backyards and great swing sets or whatever. And some kind of wonderful, fully accessible playground would still keep that neighborhood open to the community, right? So, I mean, that's my hope, but I'm just one of like 30 whatever thousand people. So,
Right. Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah, and probably now that the building is owned by the town, not the school department, probably outside the purview of school committee per se.
Mhm.
But I saw a hand up at MetroWorks, so someone else had a question.
I'm first in line here. Somebody else will pop up, I'm sure, but yeah, there's one question this year that really needs to get asked of every candidate for the top two offices, and we'll get to Kathryn later. And I'm sure you're prepared to answer it, which is what is the implication of the override, and particularly for the schools, and if it passes, if it doesn't pass? I'm sure you've heard the arguments from people who don't want it and what they have to say. So how do you respond?
I've heard both, and this is my favorite line, and I'm just gonna use it again. It's from Terms of Endearment. I'd rather stick needles in my eyes. And honest to God, I would rather stick needles in my eyes than be subjected to a tax increase, right? I think most people think that way, but it's been 17 years. And when you look at the budget, especially the budget for the schools, they've already taken over $2 million off of the budget. And it's kind of a slippery slope what a level services budget is and how you define that, but it's not a level services budget. And the cuts would be difficult. And the cuts would involve all of the interventionists, which are approximately 40 positions. And the problem with that is that
Can you explain intervention?
yes, those are people who come in the classroom. Like if I'm having a hard time and I'm at risk for falling behind, and maybe I'm even at risk for needing an IEP or special education, if you can like help me before my situation gets more desperate, you're really helping me with my educational process, but in a very pragmatic way. You're also saving the district some funding, right? Because you're addressing something before it becomes a more critical need. And it's important for the teachers to have interventionists in their classroom. We have so many more social emotional kinds of issues and problems and disruptions. And as a teacher, and I've taught at Boston College, with like 30 something kids, but hey, it's with the Jesuits. And if somebody's really problematic, you don't have to educate them, right? It's not like a public school. We don't have that option in our public schools. So I think the teachers, the danger is too, the teachers would leave without these interventionists, because they really supply a support system, important support system for teaching within the classroom. Otherwise, they are not as free to provide the differentiated or individualized teaching that they need to provide within the classroom. So I think it would be really tough not to get this override, would be really tough. And it'll be tough for the town too. And, you know, I tried to argue, let's do the menu option, blah, 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 blah. But honestly, the school budget is also enmeshed with the town budget. And you're like naive if you don't think that, because to also be more efficient, we've combined departments and efficiencies and all of that. And I mean, nobody does not want their trash picked up. And when you think about it from this perspective, it's been 17 years since there's been an override. Do I think it'll be an utter catastrophe? No, but I don't think much of anything is an utter catastrophe. I mean, if I'm reading the New York Times about children dying in Africa because of lack of AIDS medication, I could cry, and that's an utter catastrophe. We would pull through it, but we don't need to pull through it. I think that we can dig deeper in our pockets, and it will be a huge sacrifice for more than it will be for everyone else. And I think there's probably more that we can do to help people too, so that they can do this. But you know, it's always the case too that some people say they can't afford it. In my own experience, it's St. Patrick's Day. I come from this wonderful Irish family, a very poor family, and it's always the ones sometimes that don't have who are the most generous. You know, after my dad died, one of my aunts who spent her whole life working as a waitress gave me a check. And I'm like, I can't take this. Where are you getting this from? This is for like $1,000. And she's like, no, you have to have this. In my experience, it's always the people who don't have it, who know what it's like to live on the edge, who can dig deeper and be the most generous. And I suspect that's what's going to happen with this override too. And I hope that there'll be more recognition of that, and the town will do more. I mean, the town does a lot, but I'm always a thorn in everybody's side when it comes to these social justice issues. I ask the same questions on a field trip. What are you doing for kids who can't afford it? You know, what are you, because I think it's important. Cindy, you have your hand up.
Is that okay? It's related to what you were just saying. Do you have a sense of how long interventionists have been a part of the school system, like process? Because what you're describing is news to me, and I was trained as a teacher in the late 80s, early 90s.
Right. It's a more recent development, and it was especially a development that was important during COVID. And after COVID, I mean, it's been 5 years. We recently celebrated the 5-year anniversary, but the socialization skills of children took a huge step back. I'm thinking of my own. I've got cousins who have children, and they skipped kindergarten because it was COVID, and they can't settle down in first grade now because they, you know, part of kindergarten is you learn to sit still, and you learn that kind of discipline to get ready for school and stuff like that. So there are just much more social emotional problems. And, you know, Massachusetts has great schools. We are like ranked #1, but you would be surprised. There's a recent Department of Education survey that came up that ranks Massachusetts towards the bottom of the pile when it comes to helping kids with special needs. We are ranked with Texas. And
That's horrific.
it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. And if I talk to one more parent from the Native public schools that has to hire a lawyer to get their child the special help that they think they need, it's not acceptable. I know that we can do better. So that's my hope too.
Would you say that all 40 of those positions were added then, or were some of the, like, do you have a sense of how far back that kind of?
I would say a lot of them were added then.
Okay, thank you.
Curious on the same topic,
Oh,
have they be assigned to be other kind of teachers? if people are retiring or whatnot?
There is attrition from retirement already, and positions have been cut. I mean, I always think poor Tim Love, who's off being a superintendent in Norwood, but his position was not rehired. So there were administrative positions that were not rehired. And that's a little worrisome that we don't have a deputy superintendent.
That's what he was.
Yes,
Okay.
because if something happened to the superintendent, he was ready to step up. And he also had a legal background and, or was developing
Right.
even a stronger legal background. And that was important because the district was still inundated with all of the Freedom of Information Act requests and all of that. So there have been cuts already, serious cuts already made. So I looked carefully at that budget, and a lot of times the decisions on who stays, who goes, it's the most recent to be hired. There's also union processes. You can't just go in and decide, like, oh, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, or whatever. This is all in conversation with unions, that you have responsibility to teachers and to unions with this. So it's complicated. Yes.
Surprised we're so low on the statewide thing for special needs. I know it's overall the state, but I think Natick and closer to Boston is pretty good. And my daughter went through the whole special needs thing from early on until now. And I don't know, I know people who moved out of different states to come to Massachusetts because of the help you get with special needs.
I would say that, and I would say that Natick. But I think that we could be better. I am dismayed by the numbers of parents having to hire lawyers. I'm dismayed by, and I've sat through the training sessions with an outside lawyer on the numbers of parents having to even hire an advocate, so their children qualifies for special ed. That can be like $5,000 to $7,000. And I just think, oh, well, forget it. I mean, somebody who suffers from a low income, that's kind of out of reach. And so you almost have to go through public school now with your checkbook open. Like everything is so expensive, like your kids can't play sports, your kids can't do this, they can't do that. Everything is really expensive. And God love the Rotary Club, because I can't tell you, a lot of it's hidden, but the ways that they step up to help children who cannot afford, when they become aware of a need, who cannot afford, the way they step up is very, very inspiring. It makes a difference. And Joe Keefe used to say this even back in the day. I mean, it is a shame. I mean, why do kids have to pay for bus transportation to go to a public school?
Right.
Didn't used to.
I mean,
Well-
never used to. I mean, it's what is free in public about public education. And I mean, I don't think I can change all of the financial implications of that by any run, but I think I can keep being a thorn in people's sides and keep asking the questions and helping us to be a little bit more kinder, and to partner, to not only partner, but partner bravely with other community organizations. And we've done that. We've got the Natick Education Foundation, we've got Spark Kindness.
Well, thank you, Donna. I just want to be mindful of the time here. I really appreciate this discussion so far and your school committee candidacy. Hopefully it all goes well. I don't know that I've ever heard another candidate say one of your goals was to make sure that it was a contested race. I agree 100% with why you feel that way, and it's a laudable position. But let's take the opportunity to switch gears a bit and move over to the select board race, and Kathryn Coughlin, who's there at Metro Works.
I think the camera
Are you
view
okay?
is just good over
Is
there,
it?
and we can all see you, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
We're talking about whether to switch positions. I think you can
Oh,
see Kathryn
yeah.
pretty well on camera from where she is, because.
Well, and I just want to thank you all, and I hope for your vote. And I think choices are important, and nobody should automatically be kicked into any elected position.
I'll ask my questions later.
Thanks, Donna. So Kathryn, do you want to make kind of an opening?
Yeah, I have some,
comments?
I'm like Donna said, I know most of you, many of you know me, but you don't, there are a lot of things about me you don't know. So I want to start with just talking a bit about my background. I grew up the eldest of four, and my parents divorced when I was in ninth grade. So I've been working since I was in eighth grade, and in ninth grade and 10th grade, I started working full time. I delayed my education so that I could help raise my siblings. And once they were launched, I went to college. So I went to college at 26, and I went to Berea College in Kentucky, which is it's the first interracial co-ed higher ed institution in the United States. And everyone who goes there goes free. You work 10 hours a week for the school, and you have to be of high academic promise, but low financial means. So there, they instilled in me, and it's part of my background anyway, the dignity of labor in all of its forms, the importance of social justice, the importance of standing up for people who don't have a voice and being that voice. While I was there, I applied to be a Truman Scholar, and I was the first Truman Scholar from Berea, Kentucky. So a Truman Scholarship is a congressional scholarship of $30,000 awarded to at most one student from each state. And it is for those who have dedicated their lives to a career in public service. And that $30,000 is meant to, this was 1994, is meant to defray the cost of grad school or law school. So I went to graduate school at Georgetown and studied modern Arab studies. That's my master's, and Islamic history was my PhD. So that's kind of a strange leap from where I was. I had never left the country, and as a sophomore, I went to the West Bank to study the impact of military law. So the research question was, if you live under military occupation and you don't have police, if somebody steals your car, how do you resolve that? So it looked at all these informal resolution networks, and how do you when you get married? So the religious courts were all you had, whether you were religious or not. But that month was so fascinating. It was just January term that I called my dean and said, I'm not coming home till August. I'm sending you 4 independent studies drafts, and I have a job, I have a place to live, and I want you to walk this through the General Academic Council so that I'm still a full-time student. I can still get my stipend. And so that's what I did. I worked for the Arab Human Rights Organization in Nazareth, Israel, and lived in Nazareth and then traveled. So I spent time in, I have great travel stories, but we won't go there. So after 20 years, after graduate school, I was writing my dissertation when 9/11 happened. At the time, my husband had moved up here he took a job up here, and I said, I'm not leaving DC until we know that this is, so we commuted back and forth about every 3 weeks, we flew back and forth. 9/11 happened, and I was like, life's too short. So I left, I abandoned my dissertation, which was fascinating to me, but wasn't going to change the world. And so I moved up here with my husband and went into active public service. So I founded a nonprofit that worked in the field of public diplomacy and worked for the State Department in Muslim communities. I'd go mostly in South Asia, a couple in the Middle East trips, where I would go to communities, and some were super, super rural, and some were, Mumbai, Calcutta, Cairo, kind of presenting a different face of America than the invading force of Iraq, because that was the context then. After that, I worked in academic administration in Islamic studies, first at Georgetown and then at Harvard. And in 2016, I decided to do something completely different. I bought a liquor store. So I realized that under the Trump administration, there wasn't really a need or any money. Public diplomacy with the State Department wasn't going to be an option. Not a lot of things I knew about. Islamic studies doesn't really have a strong, what would I say, like commercial aspect to it. So I wanted to try something different. I bought Sherborne Wine and Spirits and made a fine wine store out of it, which was, I was there for 4 years. I had never been in retail. I had never done anything for profit. In 4 years and 4 days, I took I increased the enterprise value, so the value of the business by 71%, profits 52%, and then I retired. So what that meant was that gave me a year to figure out what the select board was about. Mike Hickey reached out to me, former select board member, good friend, served with him on the ZBA for 5 years. And I'm also a town meeting member, and Native Affordable Housing Trust, but in any event, he reached out and said, I think you should run for select board. I said, great. So I spent a year going to every select board meeting, except the retreats. And I ran and was elected 3 years ago. Town meeting member, I think 15 years, Native Affordable Housing Trust for the last 2. And so the issues that are important to me, some of you know, I weigh in on them, some of you may not be aware of, but affordable housing is a passion of mine. I'm happy to announce that today, 246 North Main Street, which was a tax title property, that the town took, and when you take when the town takes a property that's in tax title, it becomes the treasurer's. So town meeting has to vote to transfer from the treasurer's office to the select board, and then we can dispose of it. So we transferred it to the Native Affordable Housing Trust, and they're doing an RFP that published today. Habitat for Humanity is going to put in a bid. There may be other bids, but the thought is to build a single family home that will be part of our subsidized housing inventory, or SHI, in perpetuity. I sat on several very contentious decisions over the last 3 years. One is 5 Auburn Street. And so if you have been wading in the cesspool that is Facebook pages on Native, you've seen that there's a lot of criticism for selling a property for $100 to a nonprofit and turning down Trask's offer of $2 million for a $4.5 million assessed property to build 10 $1 million homes. So yeah, there are tax implications to that. 10 $1 million homes will definitely raise the tax levy and generate taxes. But this is a 32 unit, all affordable at 30% AMI or 60% AMI. That takes our teachers, our seniors. How many seniors do we have who are house rich and cash poor? It's very important to me that seniors stay, if they're not going to age in their home and they want to downsize, being in the community in which they live is critical. Mm-hmm. This is where their social contacts are, the religious institutions, their healthcare providers. And I've spent a lot of time with the elderly in the last couple of months, and it's lonely. It's really lonely. So affordable housing, yeah, I'd make that decision again in a heartbeat. I might have negotiated some things differently, but I would make that decision again. On environment and sustainability, the dam issue, another decision I'd make in a heartbeat again. It's not just the environmental issue. For those who, and there are those who don't care about the environmental issue, I want to talk about it from a fiscal standpoint, fiscal stewardship standpoint. Just north of our dam are 6 failing dams that are private. So if we have a catastrophic event, even if we built up the dam, so first of all, in order to be in compliance with the Office of Dam Safety, all the trees would have to be removed. There'd have to be concrete riprap. I think that's what it's called. Not riffraff, but anyway. It would be really, what is it? Riprap. Riprap.
Yeah.
Okay. It would not be the beautiful thing that we see today. And even if we did all of that, which would cost a lot more than removing the dam, those 6 dams fail in a catastrophic weather event and water comes down and our dam fails. Natick is responsible, along with those 6 private dam holders, for all of the financial implications and the potential loss of life. So that's another issue I would do again. The override, I support the override. The implications of not having an override. On the town side, I won't speak about the school side, Donna spoke to that quite eloquently. We cannot afford to continue postponing our capital improvement projects, we just can't. We normally put $16 million a year into capital improvement. That's roads, buildings, HVAC, schools, Benham sprinkler system. We're looking at maybe 3.5 if we don't have the override. Our stabilization funds are not fully funded to where they need to be pre-pandemic. So I didn't support a menu option because I was concerned that if we said 5 million for the schools and 3 million or whatever number we come down to for the town, that parents would show up and vote only for the schools and not for the town. And I'm also of the philosophy that has been embraced by our town administrator and the interim school superintendent and the current school superintendent, one native. We have to, by law, keep the budget separate and there are firewalls between them. But I really believe in this concept of one native. So those of us who don't have, I don't have children, I pay my taxes gladly. I mean, I just want, we round up our taxes so that money goes into the elderly and disabled fund. I mean, I consider it a privilege to live here, and that's kind of the cost. Yes.
Could you just explain the menu option? I got a
Yes.
little bit of a sense of it now, but.
So the ballot question would, instead of having one for $7 million, the
Yes.
ballot question would be 2 questions.
Oh.
So would you vote for 5 million for the schools and then 3 million for town capital spending and
I see.
something?
Okay.
And so that was my concern.
Yeah.
Or and alternatively, if people didn't read it closely, they'd go, oh, I have a choice between raising taxes 5 or 3. I'll take the 3,
Yeah.
which isn't
Right.
helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to, well, I'll talk about, I've been meeting with a lot of seniors who are concerned. I spent an hour with somebody on Saturday and went by and saw her on Sunday and gave her all of the information she needs to enter the tax deferral program. And I can talk more about that if people have questions. I want to support local businesses. I worked really hard to continue the work of Paul Joseph when he was on the select board and reform and rewrite our alcohol policy. So why is that relevant? Because we get a percentage of meals taxes. And when restaurants can have alcohol licenses, they're much more willing to come here and open businesses, come to native. When Wellesley reformed theirs about 3 years ago, they opened 12 to 15 restaurants. Restaurants are, if you don't have an alcohol license, you don't make money on the
Right.
food, and labor
That's right.
costs are so high. Hopefully, we'll see that here.
What's the issue though? We just don't have enough of them?
We have plenty of licenses. Oh, I'm sorry. The issue was that 20 years ago, a former select board had enshrined in the state constitution, the state mass general laws, that no restaurant could have an all alcohol license unless it had a minimum of 100 seats. So we had to actually do a special act to undo that. And the reason that's unusual is the select board has control over all alcohol policy. So what a previous select board said, we don't want a future select board to be able to undo this easily. We could have a meeting, well, we have a meeting on Wednesday, 48 hours notice, we could change it. You know, the select board is in charge of policy. And so, yeah, my preference is to ensure that we support businesses and that we work to make Natick one of the premier sites for life sciences. Life science buildings, I just, last week, I think it was, went to the Abbey Labs 3 building, their grand opening. That space rents for $500 a square foot. It is astonishing what they're doing. And the taxes they pay, good jobs, you know, great tax generators. So I want to make sure that we support them and give them what they need. And in my next term, I want to locate additional parcels and tax title for affordable housing. Ensure the parks project and dam removal, so the parks down around where the dam is. I want to think outside the box for funding. So for example, we do a really good job in this town of getting money for sustainability and environmental grants. Jillian Wilson Martin is astonishing. That money might dry up. I mean, we're looking at what's happening at the federal level, that impacts the state level. So I looked at what other towns have done, and Acton in 2016, I think, had the equivalent of a net zero, like we have committee. And what they did was they turned that into a nonprofit, and the nonprofit went out and got grants for the town. So there are foundations that fund environmental causes, but they don't give to municipalities, they give to 501c3s. I want to work with the state delegation regarding extending tax deferral outside seniors. So for people who are hit with catastrophic medical bills and things like that, so that they don't fall through the cracks. And work with the Johnson School planning. So I'll just throw that out there. And I'm open to questions.
I guess I'd like to, oh, go ahead. Someone at Metro works there? I know I have a question, but.
I guess I'll jump in first.
Yeah.
Yeah, you covered one of my controversial issues, 5 Auburn Street. You explained that pretty well. The other one that's come up is the anti-immigration, or the immigration, pro-immigration versus anti-immigration policy. And I think you have the unenviable luck of being chair during that, which is supposed to be a non-controversial policy and turned to be anything but. So I guess sort of the first question I might ask as an outsider, why are you going to put yourself through this again for another 3 years?
I was hoping you weren't going to bring up the immigration documentation policy. When I was listing my point was to say that, yes, I've sat through difficult decisions. I stand by those decisions. This is one of those. Didn't want to bring it up, but thank you, Martin. Why do I want to do this again? Because I feel like I haven't finished the work. I greatly enjoy helping people, and in this role, not because I'm on the select board, but because I'm visible. People have reached out to me and said, I don't know how to, here's one. This is a really good, completely not select board related. Someone reached out to me and said, a neighbor's being illegally evicted. Can you help him? And I said, I am the best non-practicing lawyer that's not a lawyer in this town. So I went over, we met, we sat down, and I said, okay, this is what we need to do. Because I can't practice law, let me show you what you need to do, and got a constable. And it was only because I was visible in this role. It has nothing to do with being a select board member. So I enjoy that. That was a great, the eviction was stopped. He got 3 or 4 months in there while he could look for additional housing. So those are the things I enjoy about the immigration documentation policy. I stand by the policy. I would redo the process. Now, we spent 2.5 years doing the process, and it was ready to go in the summer. It took forever to get a meeting with all the stakeholders so that we could put it on the select board agenda. So it ended up being pushed till after the national elections, and that became a touchstone. So in my narrow bubble of native and not thinking about the national scene, I didn't think about the implications of that. It's 4 months later, and there are no tent cities on the common. There are no buses of migrants that have pulled up. We have not suffered waves of Venezuelan gangs or crime. And I was so surprised that people were not amenable to the very strong argument that other communities have done this that are socioeconomically and demographically like ours. Acton, Concord, Maynard, there's a bunch of them. In 2016, they did this in response to the Muslim ban, and they did not see an appreciable impact on their budget. So we're not Somerville. We don't want to be Somerville or Boston. That was not the point. I think I answered the question.
Yeah.
Right. So I know Susan has her hand up, but can I? Well, go ahead, Susan, and then I want to jump in with a question too.
Yes, thank you so much, Doug. Greatly appreciate that opportunity because it piggybacks off of what Kathryn was just saying. Kathryn, first of all,
it might.
yes, exactly. Thank you so much, Doug, as you're such a fantastic moderator. First of all, Kathryn, I want to, if I may, just applaud you for your leadership and courage during what was clearly a very difficult time. And I completely, having worked with you and our coalition and other stakeholders, understood the timing because we were working with you one-on-one and understood that situation. I want to also say that I really appreciate what you said about your future forward looking on the creations of 501c3s to pivot our environmental policy objectives in the town and look at tax deferrals. And I just want to encourage also the same type of future forward preemption of anti-immigration attitudes, because much of what you have talked about in terms of bolstering our community is supported by the labor of immigrants, many of whom are in fact legal and not just illegal human beings, but that these issues are actually all interconnected, and future planning also needs to go forward so that we're not caught off our heels on what we also need to do to protect the progress that has been made. And I just want you to know that at least the people that I speak with in our community are available and ready to help problem solve and think ahead as to how we do that so that it is all interconnected and moving forward. And I want to encourage you and all the people in Natick we've often thought and said, we don't want to discuss national issues because we're just talking about the town of Natick, and we need to just work on what we can work on. But I don't think that dichotomy actually works because we are in an ecosystem. And I want to ask yourself and your thoughts on, how these integrated issues could move forward. And it's a rather complex question, but how they all inform each other. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Susan. I think that's a really, really good point. My 89-year-old mother-in-law lives with me. Many of you know that. She's from Calcutta. My husband is very concerned about leaving the house. We were going to go to Montreal. We're not leaving the country, or we're not taking her with us. And she's a green card holder. Just can't risk it. And so my heart's there, Susan. I appreciate your comment. And yes, I agree with you completely.
Okay, so thanks for that. I know the hands are up at MetroWorks, but I did want to just jump in with my question, which is kind of open-ended, but and you could use any of the topics that you mentioned, either the immigrant policy, the dam issue, any of the others. The nature of our town is that there's a whole plethora of things that select board has decision authority over. There's other things that town meeting has authority over. There are other things that go to vote, like override. It strikes me that there's huge confusion on the general part of the town as to who decides what and whose voices should be counted for what. Although a lot of that confusion seems to arise from, I think you were the one or someone that termed all the Facebook groups the cesspool of Natick Facebook, and I have to agree with that. So without giving undue voice, to what may be a minority on Facebook, how big an issue do you see this as, and are there any strategies that you'd suggest for how do we promote a better understanding of who's responsible for what? Where are the boundaries? And whose voices do we have to listen to and pay attention to?
That's a great question. First off, I'd encourage everyone who hasn't done so to watch the Natick 101 for the select board. The Natick 101 series is an introduction to your government. The school committee has done one, town administration has, the finance team, and the idea is to build up a series of videos that explain how our government works. That's one thing. Jay, our communications director, has done some research on the voices on Facebook. They're a small minority. They're a small but vocal minority. So whose voices do we listen to? I try to listen to people who aren't in the room. There are people who don't show up and don't participate, but their voices, their opinion needs to be heard. So how do you reach them? I will sit down, and I put this on Facebook so many times, including with my friend John Coughlin, who's not my friend, that I will meet with anyone and have coffee. I will meet
Right.
anywhere. My cell phone number is on my business cards. I give it out freely. I will answer the phone. I will meet somebody. I will sit down and talk to you. How do I weight those? So weight the voices. In decision making, I try to make the decision that's best for the town. So while the 5 Auburn Street, and I also want to point out something, with these 3 contentious issues, the dam, 5 Auburn, and immigration, I'm going to toot my own horn and say that I handled those with grace and aplomb. I took a lot of, thank you, Susan. I took a lot of guff and still do. And I'm also really extraordinarily blessed with a number of people who reach out and just send me short emails. I don't know these people who say, thank you so much for, what you're doing, or thank you for your service. These are people I've never met. So I take those and they're in my inbox and I keep them unread. So that when I have one of those days, that's really less than, which is less than perfect or less than kind to me, I open and I read those. I'm like, oh yeah, I got this. That's okay. I also have a list of 25 people, mostly women, a few men. And I've been also very open about this. I've lived with major depressive disorder for 40 years, and mental health issues are very important to me, especially among the elderly. And so I have a list of 25 people who I've asked to be my bank. And so I'm having a really rough day. I call them, and if you see a call from me, but you can't take it, that's okay. It's a 5-minute conversation because there's somebody else on the list. And it's either a 5-minute vent or a 5-minute, I need you to tell me I got this. And it's been a really great lifesaver. It's a great life hack. You don't need 25. I encourage anybody to put a list of 10 together or whatever. And then I make a decision based on data. So 5 Auburn was looking at the time we were in compliance with the 10% threshold that we need to maintain. But I also saw that coming up, we had no projects that were going to go live, and we were going to drop below that 9.46% the following year. Now, what is the impact of that? If we drop below 10%, a developer can pose a multifamily or whatever they want, or a subdivision, and not be subject to our zoning laws. They can apply directly with the state and the Chapter 40B. That's called an unfriendly 40B. The friendly 40B is 5 Auburn, St. Pat's is a friendly 40B. That's when you sit down with the developer and you work everything out. And you understand that although they could go to the state, and we're really lucky, Metro West Collaborative, wants this project to go forward. Stonegate wants St. Pat's to go forward. So we've been working together with our development agreements to make sure that that happens. So in the end, I make the decision based on data, what's best for the entire town, every segment of the town, not just people who have a voice or people who are loud or people who organize.
Cool. Thank you. I think might have inadvertently lowered MetroWorks' hands. Were there another question there? And then we'll go to Brindley.
It looks like we got about 3 people lined up here at this point.
Oh.
I would say that Donna was first, and then Cindy, and then Carrie, but you can figure it out.
Go ahead.
First, I want to commend you a lot on your communication skills. You have precisely the kind of leadership skills that I think is important for somebody in your position. You answer phone calls, you respond to emails, and I never had the feeling that anything was like too small for you to handle. And this is the kind of thing that most people wouldn't know, but I had a concern about an issue with a veterans marker, and oh my God, you were on it. You followed through, and it was just amazing. So I thank you for providing that kind of leadership, and it can't be easy to do, but in terms of that kind of accessibility is not easy to do. And
It's true.
It's really wonderful. I mean, I'd like to see it for more elected leaders. So the other thing is your data on 5 Auburn was mesmerizing. I mean, I had written a letter in support of 5 Auburn. I'm very much in support of 5 Auburn. And finally, there's something in South Natick that is also sharing in affordable housing. But your data was so compelling and that project is so exciting because it's the most affordable housing that we've ever done in this
Yes.
town.
It's true.
And I appreciate you for doing that. The sanctuary stuff, I mean, I'm probably the most progressive person running for school committee, if truth be told, in some ways. And the sanctuary policy, it's great, but it's not really like what I traditionally think of from a theological level, what a sanctuary policy is. And my thorn in your side question would be some towns are coming up with an LGBTQ sanctuary town policy because of the executive orders that basically have wiped out a lot of the DEI things. And I know it's an issue, it's a complicated issue that you were asked about the Pride Progress flag. The select board was flying that for the town, and I know it's a complicated issue. I mean, I have military in my family. I know the meaning of I know the hope for the American flag, embracing everyone, right? I get the complexity of that, but I don't know, have you thought about sanctuary for an LGBT community?
I have not, I haven't seen it, but you put a bug in my ear, so I will look into it. My only concern about the request for flying the LGBTQ flag on town flagpoles is it didn't come from that community. So, and then I was contacted by 6 members of that community who said, we do not want this.
Oh.
So that's my, and we're gonna take up after November. I said the flag policy is April, May, June sometime. It's now in the hands of town council, so she can draft up some options. But we had much more pressing policies we had to get to. So it's not necessarily not important. But I will look into the LGBTQ community. And I want to say about the immigration documentation, the reason we moved from sanctuary to welcoming to that is we needed to get as many yellow light. So I think about votes or support in terms of red light. You don't craft a message for them, you're not going to move them off the needle. Green are going to be with you no matter where you end up. Let's get yellow on board to get to green.
Yeah.
And so we had to scale back our emissions for that. And we're not done. So I'll just leave that there. We're just not done with that.
I think there was another one from MetroWorks and.
Two more.
Two. First, what do you give a shout out for Rotary? You mentioned how much they've done for education here in the town. Got 2 Rotarians here, which is good. And then about the affordable housing, between Rotary and Keeping It Beautiful, spent a lot of time up at Cedar Garden and kind of see the conditions
Yes.
there. I do a lot of maintenance work at Family Promise Metro work, doing something for tomorrow. But I also manage a property at Bacon Street for the Affordable Housing Trust. So I think the idea of 5 Auburn is just, when I look at Cedar Gardens versus what 5 Auburn could be, I think that's terrific. I'm so glad you fought to get that through. And the question I have is, when I was at town meeting, there was a Warren article that came up a couple of years ago that was for seniors, which I'm proud to be now, was to kind of lock the property tax rate for seniors at a set rate. That's
Right.
Will that ever come up again?
It's against Mass General Law.
That's something new, isn't it? That just happened after, I think, those.
It's not so. I'll invoke what Frank Foss has said many times, our almost former moderator. So he has told me numerous times that town meeting can pass whatever it wants to, whether it contradicts state or federal law. It's just when it goes to the AG's office, they're gonna kick it back.
Right.
And so, for example, you have a town, I don't remember if it's Amherst or Northampton, that said no nuclear weapons can traverse through our town.
Right.
That, it's probably not going to happen, where they are, but, yeah, it's against Mass General Law. It's also against, so about a number of ideas have come up. Do we, after so many years of paying taxes, can we tell seniors they don't pay taxes anymore? Against Mass General Law. If you, there's just, we beat this thing so much and try to look in the bush just for every single nickel we can, at the same time, making sure we protect people who are gonna be negatively impacted by the override. So, yeah, it's unfortunate.
Well, let's take the other question from Metroworks, and then Brinley's been patient there.
So, it's come up in a number of questions between the two of you, but I looked up in the election and saw that about 1/3 of Natick voted for Trump in the fall, and I yesterday rode my bike down to the recycling center and back, and almost every other house on 27, it's either yes or no for the override.
Mhm.
So this issue of divisiveness within the town and on Facebook or whatever, is there anything that the select board could do to, well, one, acknowledge the difference of opinion, and two, lower the temperature? Like, I don't know, like what, or if it's not the select board, but how does a town do that? Or just curious
You know,
for your thoughts.
I don't know. So
Yeah.
what I would say is this, both Bruce and I have been on Facebook and being pilloried constantly by providing actual facts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so at some point, you kind of get tired of being a piñata. At some
Yeah.
point, you're just like, you know what? John Coughlin was out 2 weekends ago with his no sign. I went up to him, I introduced myself, shook his hand. I was in seniors, I'm sorry, what is the Common Street for
Yes.
select board office hours? And I said, can I get you a cup of coffee? Because it was cold. And he said, no. I said, okay. The next day, I'm accused of sleeping with, literally in bed with Trask, which is kind of the opposite, because,
What?
you know, like I didn't support Trask. It was just this bizarre sort of, 5 Auburn Street, the private developer.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
the
So-
one you voted against, so that doesn't make any sense.
Well, it wasn't a very sensible post, but my point is, the next Saturday, I went up to him and said, hey, John, and I was carrying my sign.
Yeah.
I said, hey, John, remember me? I came up and asked you if you wanted a cup of coffee. Part of what I try to do is kill with kindness, and that is the only way that we can eventually wear down. He was joined with someone else, and Emily Warmington was going around to everybody who had signs and bringing them little munchkins. So she went down and said, would you like a munchkin? And John said, no. And his friend said, yeah, I'd like one, thank you. And then John went ahead and took one. I think it's nothing the town can do. This is something that has to come from the community, and it has to be all of us engaging people where they are, until engaging in good faith is not possible. And then you just say, be well, and move on.
Right.
You move past the red lights and you get to the undecided, and you say, what information do you need? I'm willing to get that information to you.
Thank you for that, Kathryn. Brinley.
Yes, thanks. Kathryn, I just wanted to say, I know you know this. I've been watching Select Board for many, many, many years, and I am so unbelievably grateful for how much homework you bring to the table every time. It's just truly amazing. And I do think that we are a better town and have really benefited from your ability to bring the homework to the table. So thank you for that. What I wanted to say goes back a bunch to where we were talking about St. Pax and affordable housing and all of that. And I have been communicating with our director of communication, Jay, and Judith, and we've been working on putting together a concept for having on the website a list of all of our current building projects in town. And I know Jay's been working on it, and I don't know if it ever comes up with you guys at the select board, but if it does, I hope that you could support all of the back of the house, because I think that's where we are right now, is helping the actual people who would be responsible for that, helping it happen. So it's really just a small request to say, hey, if it comes up, please support, because I do hear all of the time from a broad group of people, not just one side or the other side, or even on a side, that we'd really like to have more more easy access to the building projects in town and what it means, how many apartments they have, how many, are they condos? Are they for rent? Are they for sale? How many affordable units are in them? What are they going to cost? Who's building it? How much parking is there? In an easy format to read. I'm familiar with the OpenGov site and I'm familiar with the searching. It's just not in an easy place right now. And so my hope is if that comes up in your work process, if you could give a little nudge or support to getting that on the website, I do think it would really benefit our town.
Thank you, Brenly. That's a good idea. Thank you.
Cool. Susan, you've got your hand up.
Yes, just on brainstorming off of what Brinley just said, and also with my colleague at MetroWorks who asked about the question, what can we do to bring to light more the importance of the override? Kathryn, I think you were alluding to, or just like kind of trying to articulate that seniors who are concerned about being able to either stay at home or at least have affordable options at home are currently trying to reconcile how do they manage a tax increase at the same time that they fear being at risk. And I think communicating with the dedicated seniors who vote consistently to help them understand the question of tax deferrals, but also everything that each and every single one of us can do to communicate with our friends and colleagues who find themselves, unfortunately, in this position, but who may not feel comfortable explaining their financial situation to a person they don't know, to be able to age with dignity. And when I reflect back and think about the first woman ever elected to the select board of Natick was not able to age here in Natick. For me, of course, the matter was far more complex than simply this point. However, nevertheless, for me, we stand on the shoulders of those giants. And so I ask myself, not only my future generations, am I caring for them? What about the generation that made it possible for me to be here? So I'd like to hear if there's anything else we can do between now and the 25th. My thought is to reach out to members of the community who are possibly maybe in this situation. But I believe that it's more peers that need to speak with peers because of this generational question. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that point.
I do. I can tell you. So when this woman reached out to me that I spent time with on Saturday, I was able to have a conversation with her without knowing anything about her financials. Mm-hmm. So the question I asked her is, are you eligible for the Massachusetts senior circuit breaker tax credit? Yes, then you qualify. We don't look at assets. We don't look at assets. So you could have a house down on the Cape and defer your taxes on your house in Natick up to half the value of your home. I looked up her home while I was on the phone with her. I said, your house is assessed at $674,000. You pay $7,500 a year in taxes. That's $7,500 a year you could have in your pocket. Send me your email address and I will email what you need to do, what documents you need. Here's a link to this, and I'll copy the tax assessor. So I didn't need to know anything about her personal financials. I didn't need to ask her about her assets. I just said, these are the things you're going to need. For example, your home is in a trust. You are the trustee and the beneficiary. That's good. You need your trust documents. Do you have a mortgage or a line of credit? Yes, I don't need to know how much. Your bank needs to sign off on this. Also, the date for deferral has to be filed by April 1. So let's go. Let's get all this. I gave her a list of everything she needs to do, copied Eric Henderson. So they're getting together to talk about what she needs. So I think the peer-to-peer is important, but I don't have the capacity to train up a group of seniors to talk to other seniors or even identify them. So we do know that there's only 644 seniors who file the circuit breaker tax credit with the state. We have 6,000 seniors, but we don't know which of those 6,000 filed because that's personal information. So we are sending a mailer to all 6,000 with everything that they're eligible for. And it's going to be in an envelope with a stamp. So they're not getting a postcard they're going to lose. Mm-hmm. And it will also tell them how they qualify for free sewer and water, or how do you file abatements. It'll have all the information that they're eligible for and resources and things like that. So that is unfortunately can't be done before the override, but that's something the select board is committed. It's committed to doing. So probably after town meeting, given the constraints on town staff to do anything before town meeting.
Thank you for that, Kathryn. Brittany had her hand up, but then dropped.
Well, I was
Well, just before I go to you, Brittany, I just wanted to make a general announcement. Now that we're at 10:30 and we've kind of given equal time to both candidates, we'll probably wrap up soon, but for whatever time we have remaining, I'd like to encourage people to ask questions of either Kathryn or Donna, but go ahead, Brittany.
I mean, I don't know if it's necessary anymore, Kathryn. But I do think that there's a lot of talk about how this, the deferring of the taxes means that the town can just come and take your house. And I know that's not true, but I didn't know if Kathryn wanted to talk more about that.
I will, but because we're gonna be winding up shortly, I just want to say that for those of you who are still with us and in the room, if you've not endorsed me and you want to, go to kathrynfornatick.org. And you can volunteer to hold a sign or put a lawn sign and carry. I have your lawn signs in my car.
Bruce put them on my neighbor's yard.
Oh, I know. That's why I'm giving them to you, so I don't do that. So what I would say is the town can't take your home. It's only going to be up to 50% of your assessed value, which goes up every year, as do your taxes. It's highly unlikely that this woman that I mentioned with an assessed value of $674,000, she's 78 years old. I gave her the numbers of how long, I mean, she would have to live to be 100 and something before the taxes hit, I mean, like 109 before the taxes hit where the assessed value might be, given current rates of assessing and taxes go up. It's a lien, and when you pass away or move, if you move into assisted living, that 2% simple interest, which is a gift. Someone made a sarcastic comment on Facebook about the gift that the town gives seniors. It is a gift. It's a gift from everybody who's not a senior, lending a senior money at 2% special simple interest, which when it's paid off will not be equal to the present day value. So it is a gift. It's a gift, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's what we do. So nobody's taking the house. The house that's 2% goes to 16% when you sell the house or die, and that's to keep the heirs from squatting in the house at 2% special interest, simple interest, and that encourages the estate to dispose of the home and pay the taxes. So that's my whole spiel on taxes.
Thanks for that additional clarification and for mentioning how people could endorse you. Donna, did you want to make any other like kind of closing or further statements as to what you'd like people to do to help you with your candidacy in the closing weeks?
I do have signs. If you would like to host a sign, I'm happy to give you a sign or make that happen. I have a dead car in my driveway, which has made my life really interesting for the past couple of weeks. I've become friends with Uber. I walk a lot, and I have to say the Catch Connect, which is free, is just an amazing service that this town subsidizes. So I'm happy to give you a lawn sign, and I do have a website, and it's still under construction because of various reasons, but the goal is for it to be up by later today or tomorrow morning. It's donnafornatickschools.com.
Thank you for that. I see both Rick and MetroWorks have their hands up. Rick?
Yes, thanks to both Donna and Kathryn. I don't know two more eloquent candidates for office, and it's been wonderful. I just want to mention two resources. One, to stress again that the Natick 101 session with the select board is well worth viewing if you missed it, which not many people actually saw it live, but it is a great resource. I learned a lot, and I thought I already knew something, but I now know about 5 times as much. The second is on the econatick.org site, the select board candidate climate conversation is available if you click on the logo of that particular event in the past, you go straight to the YouTube posting of it that I think Doug put up there last week. So I just want to remind that I've sent it the direct link to the candidates, as I did, I think, to the school committee candidates. So thank you, Doug.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Those were great forums that EcoNatick orchestrated with the candidates. And the MetroWorks hand has gone down. Anything?
It just does it automatically.
Yeah.
That was the other question.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask a question for Don. Actually, you talked about geothermal at Memorial School.
I did.
Yeah, I don't know what the cost of that might be to implement that. Would that help ensure that the school would get platinum LEED certification?
I hope so. I think it would be like a huge step. And Jillian sent me, there's been a little more progress than I thought. She sent me an MSBA a link to an MSBA program on geothermal in schools, and I'm happy to send that link to you.
So MSBA could contribute towards that.
Yes, and
Okay.
there is more money that I met a really amazing young woman who's an architect who applied to be on the building committee,
Okay.
and she knew of grant sources also for enhanced sustainable practices for schools. So I do think that there would be money for geothermal
Okay.
that would be available, and the long-term cost savings for that would be just phenomenal. And I think it would be an incredible educational experience for our kids too,
Yeah, I agree.
to explain, like how the heat, you go down low enough
Yeah.
and below the frost line and you've got the heat, and
That'd be
it just
one
would
of the
be
questions we
cool.
can too.
Yeah,
It has to do with Dr. Nolan. It's just, some people was very upset that she had left to go to Newton. What's your feelings about the whole situation? What happened? Or is there regrets?
love Dr. Nolan. I thought she did a very good job, but people grow, and when you reach a point where people do reach a point where maybe it's time to move on for them personally or whatever. And I was, as part of the committee that was negotiating contracts,
Yeah.
I was unwilling to keep enhancing money that was given to her because, historically, the superintendent earns the highest income in Natick, as it should be, because we respect education so much, right? But if you up that so much, I mean, you get to 300,000, then, you've got your town administrator, you've got your fire chief, you've got your police chief, who rightly are gonna wanna come back and want more money. So everything has repercussions, and there's only so far. I mean, I view that as part of my fiscal responsibility, like
Okay. Good
not
answer.
to go.
How much did Newton
high.
offer them?
How much did what?
Newton offer her.
It's a much bigger community, so.
It is a lot more, and I think it was, that's public record. I mean, I don't wanna be misquoted. I think it was maybe 290 plus with all kinds of perks and things like that. And I don't know, I mean, I haven't looked up how much we're offering Melissa Splash, because people said, oh, we're gonna have to offer a new superintendent like that amount or whatever, so. It's all complicated. It's all complicated, but we all change, we grow, we develop. I hear good things about what she's doing in Newton, and I think we helped to make her into the outstanding superintendent she will probably be in Newton.
All right. Well, I want to thank both candidates and all of our participants. As usual, I think it was a pretty good dialogue. Again, always appreciate the opportunity to have answers that are longer than 2 minutes. I think it's really helpful to folks. Next week is just the day before the election. And so we had reserved that for any uncontested candidates. We had a great uncontested candidate conversation with Jeff Alderson, the man who's bravely stepping into the town moderator role. And next week, so far, the only confirmed attendee is Alan Cloutier. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, but he's the fellow that we had to have the special town election for, because we'd unfortunately forgotten to put his name on the ballot for the previous election. So he's been filling the interim seat on the planning board, but is now running for a full seat on that board. We have also invited Kathryn Kelly and Kathy Collins, who both canceled out of their scheduled appearances with us in previous weeks. I don't have any confirmation that either of them will be here. I know folks in particular would love to see Kathryn Kelly, since she has yet to make any other forums to my knowledge, but we will see what happens. And in the meantime, enjoy the week, everyone.
She just asked me for the recording of the select board candidates, climate conversation, which she missed. And I sent it to her, but I will follow up with her and urge her to come.
That's great. Yeah, if you've got any personal connection, I have exchanged a couple of emails with her, but
she did come to the Natick Dems, but I don't believe the Natick Dems are making their monthly meeting recording public.
Oh, okay. Good to know that she went to that.
She did come to that.
Great. Okay.